To avoid a forced marriage, she forcefully kissed security guard, not knowing he was a hidden boss. Hello, my beautiful family. Welcome to Mr. Peter Stories. The more that you read, the more things you will know. The more that you learn, the more places you'll go. I don't know. Maybe I upset you last time. You didn't tell me how the story was, and it's been weighing on my heart. Have I been disturbing you? If I have, I'm so sorry. That was never my intention. I value you all so much. Today I won't say much, no extra talk, no distractions. Let's dive into the story. I hope you'll stay with me till the end. Let's begin. The grandfather clock in the Silverstone mansion struck noon, its deep resonance echoing through the marble corridors like a funeral toll. Beatrice Silverstone stood before the full-length mirror in her private suite, her reflection a stark reminder of everything she was about to leave behind. The wedding dress, a custom Vera Wang creation worth more than most people's annual salary, hugged her curves perfectly. The intricate lace details and crystal embellishments caught the sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows, making her deep brown skin glow like polished mahogany. Her natural curls had been meticulously styled into an elegant updo, with a few carefully placed tendrils framing her face. The makeup artist had worked for hours to achieve the perfect look, subtle yet striking, emphasizing her high cheekbones, full lips, and the golden undertones in her complexion. A fortune in diamonds draped her neck and ears, family heirlooms that had been passed down through generations of Silverstone women. But despite all the perfection surrounding her, Beatrice's dark eyes held a storm of emotions. At 23, she was about to be sacrificed on the altar of corporate ambition, handed over to Maxwell Richardson, a man old enough to be her grandfather, with a reputation that made her skin crawl. The sound of her mother's favorite jazz song drifted up from the garden, where hundreds of guests were already gathering for what society magazines were calling the wedding of the year. The irony wasn't lost on Beatrice. Her mother would have never approved of this arrangement. Catherine Silverstone had been a force of nature, a woman who had helped her father build Silverstone Industries from a small tech startup into one of the few black-owned Fortune 500 companies in America. She had always taught Beatrice to forge her own path, to never let anyone dictate her destiny. But Catherine was gone now, taken too soon in a car accident 3 years ago, and everything had changed. James Silverstone, once a loving father who had encouraged his daughter's independence, had become obsessed with preserving their company's legacy at any cost. The memory of last night's confrontation with her father played in her mind like a horror movie she couldn't stop watching. She had found him in his study, surrounded by financial reports and market analyses, his usually immaculate appearance showing signs of strain. "Daddy, please," she had begged, one last attempt to reach the man who had once carried her on his shoulders and taught her to read financial statements like fairy tales. "Don't make me do this. Maxwell Richardson is a monster. Everyone knows what he did to those small tech companies in Silicon Valley." James had looked up, his face carved from stone. "Do you think I don't know that, Beatrice? Do you think this is what I dreamed of for my only child?" He had stood then, walking to the window that overlooked the sprawling grounds of their estate. "But dreams don't keep companies alive. Dreams don't protect the livelihoods of our 5,000 employees. Dreams don't preserve what your mother and I built from nothing." "Mum would have never wanted this." Beatrice had shot back, her voice breaking. "Your mother isn't here." The words had exploded from him with such force that they both flinched. In the silence that followed, he had seemed to deflate, looking suddenly old and tired. "Either you marry Maxwell and secure our company's future, or watch everything our family built crumble to dust. The choice is yours." Now, standing in her wedding dress, Beatrice made her choice. She moved with purposeful efficiency, gathering the essentials she had secretly prepared: a small clutch containing her passport, emergency cash, and a burner phone, a pair of flat shoes to replace the designer heels. She had already transferred a portion of her trust fund to a private account, not enough to raise immediate alarms, but sufficient to give her a fighting chance. The wedding dress was a problem. Its magnificent train and voluminous skirts would make running difficult, but she had no time to change. She gathered the fabric as best she could, securing it with discreet clips she had hidden in her bouquet. Her hands trembled slightly, but her mind was clear. The Silverstone Mansion's security was legendary, a necessity for a family of their prominence. Every entrance and exit was monitored, every guard handpicked and thoroughly vetted. But Beatrice had grown up in this gilded cage, spending countless childhood hours exploring its secrets. She knew about the old service corridors, the hidden passages that had fascinated her as a child. More importantly, she knew the rotation schedules of the security team. She waited until she heard her Aunt Julia's distinctive laugh passing by her door, right on schedule to help the bride with her final preparations. The moment the sound faded, Beatrice slipped out of her suite and into the corridor. The house was a flurry of activity, but she moved with the confidence of someone who belonged, nodding to staff members who were too busy with wedding preparations to notice anything amiss. Her heart thundered in her chest, but her face remained composed, another skill learned from years in the corporate spotlight. The first real obstacle came at the grand staircase. Maxwell's personal security team was stationed there, their black suits and earpieces making them look like government agents. Beatrice ducked into a side passage just as one of them turned, her pulse racing. This wasn't part of the normal security arrangement. Maxwell must have added his own people without informing the family. She changed course, heading toward the east wing. It would take longer, but there was another way down through the old service stairs. As she moved, she could hear the murmur of guests in the garden growing louder. The string quartet had started playing the pre-ceremony music. She had less than 30 minutes before someone came looking for her. The service stairs creaked slightly under her feet, each sound making her wince. At the bottom, she paused, listening intently. Voices approached, the catering staff discussing appetizer arrangements. She waited until they passed, then slipped out into the lower corridor. The rear exit was close now, used primarily by maintenance staff. It was supposed to be guarded by a single member of their regular security team. As she approached, she saw him, tall, broad-shouldered, with an air of quiet authority that seemed at odds with his uniform. Something about him made her pause. Most of their security personnel were former military or law enforcement, solid, reliable men who had worked for the family for years. This guard was different. His posture, the way he carried himself, suggested something more. Before she could analyze it further, she heard voices and footsteps approaching rapidly from behind. Her father's distinctive baritone among them. They must have discovered her missing. Desperation crystallized into action. Without allowing herself to think, Beatrice approached the guard. His eyes met hers, deep, intelligent eyes that widened slightly in recognition. "Please help me," she whispered, and before he could respond, she did the unthinkable. She kissed him. The guard, whose name tag read Adjo Ambrose, froze for a moment, his body tense with surprise. Then something extraordinary happened. His strong arms wrapped around her, not restraining but supporting, and he kissed her back. The kiss deepened, sending unexpected sparks of electricity through her body. This was meant to be a distraction, a means of escape, but something about his touch felt different. Right. The thundering of footsteps grew closer, multiple voices now, calling her name. Adjo broke the kiss first, his eyes quickly assessing the situation. Without a word, he took her hand and led her through a door she hadn't even noticed, into a narrow service corridor. "This way," he murmured, his deep voice carrying a hint of a Ghanaian accent that sent shivers down her spine. "But you'll owe me an explanation." They moved swiftly through the hidden passage, the sounds of pursuit growing fainter. Adjo seemed to know exactly where he was going, guiding her with the confidence of someone intimately familiar with the building's layout. This should have struck her as strange. He was supposedly new to the security team, but in the adrenaline rush of escape, she didn't question it. The passage led them to a small door that opened into the property's vast gardens, far from the wedding setup. A service vehicle was parked nearby, its generic landscaping company logo providing perfect cover. Adjo helped her into the passenger seat, then quickly took the wheel. As they drove past the estate's outer gates, blending seamlessly with the vendor traffic, Beatrice finally allowed herself to breathe. She had done it. She was free. What she didn't know, couldn't know, was that she had just kissed one of Africa's most powerful tech moguls. Adjo Ambrose, CEO of Ambrose Technologies, had gone undercover in his own security company after discovering concerning irregularities in his corporate empire. He had been investigating possible connections between Maxwell Richardson and a series of sophisticated cyber attacks on his African operations. Now, watching the strong, beautiful woman beside him trying to gather her composure, Adjo realized his careful investigation had just become infinitely more complicated and infinitely more interesting. In the rearview mirror, the Silverstone mansion grew smaller, its imposing silhouette a reminder of everything Beatrice was leaving behind. But as the distance grew, so did her determination. She had chosen freedom over a gilded cage, uncertainty over a guaranteed but suffocating future. Little did she know, that impulsive kiss hadn't just aided her escape. It had set in motion a chain of events that would shake the foundations of two continents' corporate worlds and transform both their lives forever. As they turned onto the main highway, Beatrice finally spoke. "Where are we going?" Adjo glanced at her, his expression unreadable. "Somewhere safe. But first I believe you owe me that explanation." The sun was high in the sky now, casting long shadows through the car windows. Behind them, the perfect society wedding was dissolving into chaos. Ahead lay uncertainty, danger, and perhaps, though neither of them knew it yet, a love story that would become legend in both business and society circles. The grandfather clock in the Silverstone mansion struck 1, but Beatrice was no longer there to hear it. Her journey, their journey, had only just begun. Chapter 2. Hidden Identities. The sun had barely crept over the horizon when Beatrice woke up in an unfamiliar apartment, her heart racing as memories of the previous day flooded back. The wedding dress lay crumpled in the corner, a $50,000 reminder of everything she'd left behind. She'd changed into borrowed clothes, simple black leggings, and an oversized sweater that still carried a faint trace of Adjo's cologne. Standing at the floor-to-ceiling windows of the safe house, Beatrice watched the city coming to life 20 stories below. The apartment was modest by her usual standards, but something about it felt expensive. Subtle details that her privileged upbringing couldn't miss. The Italian coffee maker in the kitchen, the original artwork on the walls, the sophisticated security system she'd spotted by the door. Her phone, the burner she'd prepared, buzzed with news alerts. Her escape was already making headlines. Silverstone heiress leaves billionaire at the altar. The business channels were speculating about the failed merger between Silverstone Industries and Richardson Global. The society pages were having a field day with witness accounts of her mysterious disappearance with a handsome security guard. "Your father has frozen your accounts," Adjo's deep voice came from behind her. She turned to find him entering the apartment, carrying breakfast and fresh coffee. He changed out of his security uniform into well-fitted casual clothes that did nothing to hide his athletic build. "But you expected that, didn't you?" Beatrice accepted the coffee he offered, their fingers brushing momentarily. That same electric spark from their kiss flickered between them. "I transferred enough to survive before the wedding," she admitted. "I've been planning this escape for weeks. What I didn't plan on was—" She gestured between them, unsure how to describe their sudden, intense connection. Ajo moved to stand beside her at the window, his presence both comforting and unsettling. In the morning light, she noticed details she'd missed in yesterday's chaos. The elegant way he moved, his perfect posture, the subtle but expensive watch on his wrist. Something about him didn't quite fit the role of a security guard. "Why did you help me?" she asked finally, turning to face him. "You could lose your job. You could be charged with kidnapping." A shadow of something, guilt, concern, crossed his face. "Perhaps I have a weakness for beautiful women in distress," he said lightly, but his eyes were serious. "Or perhaps I know more about Maxwell Richardson than most." Before she could question him further, his phone buzzed. He checked it, his expression darkening. "Your father has hired private investigators. Richardson's men are also looking for you. Until we figure out their true motives, you need to stay hidden." "We?" Beatrice raised an eyebrow. "You've already done more than enough. I can't ask you to risk more for me." Ajo stepped closer, and Beatrice's breath caught in her throat. His hand reached up to brush a stray curl from her face, the gesture unexpectedly intimate. "What if I want to? What if helping you aligns with my own interests?" A headline on the muted TV caught her attention. Something about a major African tech company's stocks plummeting after a cyber attack. But before she could focus on it, Ajo switched off the television. "Tell me about Richardson," he said. "Why was your father so desperate to marry you to him?" Beatrice set down her coffee cup, moving to retrieve her laptop from her emergency bag. "It's complicated. Silverstone Industries has been losing major contracts lately. Our stock is down, and we're bleeding patents to mysterious competitors. The merger with Richardson Global was supposed to save us, but—" She pulled up some files she'd secretly copied from her father's computer. Ajo's eyes narrowed as he looked at the screen. His reaction was subtle, a slight tension in his jaw, a sharp intake of breath. But Beatrice caught it. She'd grown up in boardrooms, learning to read the micro-expressions of powerful men. "These contract losses," he said carefully. "They weren't accidents, were they?" "No," Beatrice confirmed. "Someone's been systematically targeting us. Richardson swooped in like a vulture, offering salvation through marriage. An old-school business alliance sealed with a wedding ring." Her voice turned bitter. "I was supposed to be the sacrificial lamb." Ajo's phone buzzed again. This time, when he checked it, he swore softly in Twi, a language Beatrice recognized from her international business studies. Another piece that didn't quite fit the simple security guard image. "We need to move," he said abruptly. "It's not safe here anymore." He began gathering their things with practiced efficiency. "Where are we going?" Beatrice asked, already packing her laptop. Ajo paused, seeming to wrestle with the decision. "To someone I trust." "But Beatrice—" He turned to her, his expression intense. "There are things you need to know about me. About why I was really at your family's estate. I'm not who you think I am." Before he could continue, the building's fire alarm began blaring. Ajo moved to the window, scanning the street below. His posture changed, becoming alert, professional. "Richardson's men, they've found us." Beatrice felt a thrill of fear, but also excitement, standing there in borrowed clothes with a mysterious man who was clearly more than he seemed. She felt more alive than she had in years. "Ready to run again?" Ajo held out his hand to her. Beatrice took it without hesitation, her smaller hand fitting perfectly in his larger one. "With you?" "Always." As they slipped out through the service entrance, Beatrice couldn't shake the feeling that she was missing something obvious about Ajo Ambrose. The way he handled himself, his knowledge of business and security, his expensive tastes carefully hidden under a modest facade. Little did she know, She was holding hands with one of Africa's most influential tech billionaires, a man whose own corporate war with Maxwell Richardson was about to collide explosively with her escape. Their growing attraction was about to become far more complicated than either of them could imagine. Chapter 3. Corporate Games. Maxwell Richardson's rage echoed through the glass-walled executive suite on the 60th floor of Richardson Global Tower. 3 computer screens before him displayed the plummeting stock prices of Silverstone Industries, but it wasn't enough. Not after Beatrice's humiliating escape had made headlines worldwide. "Find her!" he roared at his assembled executives, his fist slamming into the mahogany desk. "I don't care what it costs. Every private investigator, every security firm, every contact we have. Find her!" The board members flinched, but one woman remained steady. Angela Chen, head of their Asian operations, her silk suit as pristine as her composure. "Perhaps," she suggested smoothly, "we should focus on the more pressing matter." She gestured to the central screen where Silverstone Industries' stock had dropped another 15% since the failed wedding. "James Silverstone is vulnerable. The scandal has shareholders panicking. If we move now—" Richardson's rage transformed into a cold smile. "Initiate Protocol Phoenix." Across the city, in the modest but elegant offices of Silverstone Industries, James Silverstone stood at his window, watching the sun set behind the city's towers. His phone hadn't stopped ringing since the wedding, shareholders demanding explanations, board members threatening to jump ship, reporters seeking comments on his daughter's dramatic escape. But his attention was fixed on an old photograph on his desk. It showed him with his late wife Catherine and Thomas Ambrose, standing proudly before their first joint venture. Before everything went wrong, before the betrayals began, his computer chimed with an encrypted alert. New surveillance photos showed his daughter entering a high-end apartment building with the mysterious security guard. James's eyes narrowed as he recognized the building, owned through a series of shell companies by none other than Ambrose Technologies. "Oh, Cat," he whispered to his wife's photo, "you always said love would save our company. I hope you were right." Meanwhile, in their temporary sanctuary, Beatrice sat cross-legged on a leather couch, her laptop, displaying countless files from Silverstone Industries servers. She'd traded her wedding dress for comfortable clothes, but her mind was as sharp as ever. "Look at this pattern," she called to Adjo, who was securing the perimeter with military precision. 3 months ago, we lost the Singapore contract to a startup no one's heard of. Same thing happened in Lagos, Cairo, and Mumbai. Always the same strategy. We're undercut at the last minute by companies that materialize from nowhere. Adjo moved to look over her shoulder, his proximity sending electricity through her despite the serious situation. "These shell companies," he said, his accent thickening slightly. "The registration patterns are familiar." "How so?" He caught himself, but not before Beatrice noticed the flash of recognition in his eyes. She turned to face him, their faces inches apart. "What aren't you telling me, Adjo?" Before he could answer, his secure phone buzzed. He checked it, his expression darkening. "Richardson's making his move. Emergency board meeting at Silverstone Industries tomorrow morning." Beatrice's fingers flew across the keyboard, accessing the secure board portal. "That's impossible unless—" She paled. "Number he couldn't have." "What is it?" "Look at these transactions." She pulled up a series of stock purchases, all made through different companies in various global markets. "Richardson's been quietly buying shares through proxies, if these numbers are right." "He's close to a controlling interest," Adjo finished, his voice grim. "The wedding wasn't just about a merger. It was about preventing you from contesting his takeover." Beatrice stood abruptly, pacing the room. "The board meeting will force a vote on new leadership. Without me there to challenge it, your father loses control of the company," Adjo concluded. Their eyes met, the weight of the situation hanging between them. Beatrice saw something shift in Adjo's expression, a decision being made. "There's something you need to see," he said, moving to a hidden wall panel. Behind it was a sophisticated computer system far beyond what any security guard should have access to. "Who are you really?" Beatrice asked softly. Before he could answer, multiple alerts flashed across his screens. Richardson's teams were moving, surrounding the building, and something else, a familiar face entering the lobby. "Dad?" Beatrice whispered, watching her father on the security feed. James Silverstone walked with purpose, alone and carrying a briefcase. But was he here as ally or enemy? The corporate game had just become infinitely more complex, and time was running out. Adjo moved swiftly to the security monitors, his movements betraying years of tactical training. "We've got 2 minutes before Richardson's teams reach this floor." Beatrice's mind raced. "The service elevator, we can—" "No," Adjo cut her off, his voice firm. "Your father came alone for a reason. He's taking a huge risk. We need to hear him out." The decision was made for them as James Silverstone used a master keycard to enter the apartment. He stepped inside, his eyes taking in every detail before landing on his daughter. "I see Thomas Ambrose's son has been taking good care of you," he said quietly. The words hit like a thunderbolt. Beatrice turned to Adjo, who stood frozen, his composed facade cracking for the first time. "You knew?" Adjo asked James. "I've known since the moment you infiltrated my security team." James placed his briefcase on the table. "Just as I knew Richardson would try to use my daughter's wedding to complete his takeover." "Dad," Beatrice stepped forward, "what's really going on?" James opened the briefcase, revealing stacks of documents and a hard drive. "Everything you need to understand why Richardson wants our company so badly, why he killed your mother, and why—" He looked at Adjo. "He killed your father too." Beatrice gasped softly, her hand finding Adjo's almost instinctively. His fingers intertwined with hers, offering silent support even as his own world tilted on its axis. "The Singapore Biotech Division," James continued, spreading documents across the table. "It wasn't just about medical research. Your mother discovered something in the labs, something Richardson has been trying to bury for 20 years. Security alerts flashed on Adjo's screens. Richardson's men were now in the building, methodically searching floor by floor. "We don't have much time," James said urgently. "Richardson's real plan goes beyond corporate takeovers, the biotech research, the mysterious illnesses affecting our competitors, the sudden deaths of key scientists. It's all connected." Beatrice scanned the documents rapidly, her business degree and years of boardroom experience allowing her to see the pattern. These aren't normal acquisitions. He's building something, a network of pharmaceutical and tech companies, all researching different pieces of the same project. "Biological warfare," Adjo said grimly, examining another document, "disguised as medical research. My father discovered this just before his accident, didn't he?" James nodded. "Thomas was close to exposing everything. Catherine too, that's why—" A massive explosion rocked the building, cutting him off. Smoke began pouring through the ventilation system. "They're here," Adjo said, moving with lethal efficiency to grab go-bags he'd prepared. "We need to move, now." "The evidence," Beatrice said, reaching for the documents. "Already uploaded," Adjo replied, revealing a hidden scanner built into the table. "Your father's arrival gave us the time we needed." James smiled slightly. "You really are Thomas's son." They moved swiftly to a hidden panel in the wall, revealed by Adjo's fingerprint. Behind it was a sleek escape tunnel, clearly prepared long in advance. "You'll be safe at the backup location," James said, not moving to follow them. "Dad, no!" Beatrice grabbed his arm. "Come with us." "I can't. I have to be at that board meeting tomorrow. Have to make Richardson think his plan is working." He pulled his daughter into a fierce hug. "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. You're just like your mother, brilliant, brave, and smart enough to choose love over corporate games." Gunfire erupted in the hallway outside. Adjo took Beatrice's hand. "We have to go." Tears streaming, Beatrice let Adjo lead her into the tunnel. The last thing she saw was her father calmly sitting down at the table, arranging himself to look like he'd been there all along, searching for his runaway daughter. As they raced through the tunnel, Beatrice's mind spun with revelations. Adjo wasn't just a security guard, but the son of her father's old friend. Their parents had died trying to expose Richardson's crimes, and now the fate of both their families' legacies rested in their hands. "Why didn't you tell me who you really were?" she asked as they emerged into a hidden garage where a sleek black SUV waited. Adjo helped her into the vehicle before sliding behind the wheel. "I've spent years working undercover, gathering evidence against Richardson. I couldn't risk—" He stopped, looking at her intently. "Number, the truth is, once I met you, I wanted you to see me for myself, not my name or position." Their eyes met, electricity crackling between them despite the danger surrounding them. Without warning, Beatrice leaned across and kissed him. Unlike their first desperate kiss during her wedding escape, this one was deliberate, passionate, full of growing feelings neither had expected. When they separated, both slightly breathless, Adjo touched her cheek gently. "We're in the middle of a corporate war, running for our lives, with a murderous billionaire hunting us." "Sounds like a perfect time to fall in love," Beatrice finished, smiling despite everything. The SUV roared to life, carrying them away from the chaos erupting behind them. They had evidence to analyze, a conspiracy to expose, and 2 family legacies to protect. But they also had something Richardson hadn't counted on: each other. And as the city lights blurred past them, both realized that their hearts had recognized what their minds were just discovering. Sometimes the most powerful corporate mergers begin with a kiss. The war for their companies was just beginning. But love, they were learning, could be the strongest weapon of all. Chapter 4. Dangerous Attractions. The safe room had led them through a hidden passage to an underground parking garage where a sleek black SUV with diplomatic plates awaited them. Now, 3 hours later, Beatrice found herself in a luxurious penthouse overlooking the coast, the city lights twinkling behind them like fallen stars. "Welcome to my actual home," Adjo said, disabling the state-of-the-art security system with practiced ease. The penthouse came alive, soft lighting revealing an elegant blend of modern luxury and traditional African art. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the ocean, while original paintings from prominent African artists adorned the walls. Beatrice moved through the space, taking in details that revealed the true nature of her mysterious protector. A wall of awards and honors, many bearing the Ambrose Technologies logo. Photos of Adjo with world leaders and tech innovators, financial magazines with his face on the cover. "How long?" she asked, picking up a Forbes Africa issue proclaiming him Tech Titan of the Year. "How long have you been investigating Richardson?" Adjo loosened his tie, transforming from the security guard persona into the powerful CEO he truly was. 6 months. When Richardson started targeting your father's company, I recognized the pattern. It was the same strategy he used to destroy my father's business 15 years ago. He moved to a hidden panel in the wall, revealing a private bar. "Drink? Something strong," Beatrice replied, sinking into a plush leather chair. "I think I've earned it." He returned with 2 glasses of aged scotch, settling into the chair opposite her. In the soft evening light, with his guard finally down, he looked both more approachable and more dangerous than ever. "My father built the original Ambrose Technologies from nothing," he began, his deep voice carrying notes of old pain. We were pioneering mobile payment systems in West Africa before anyone else saw the potential. Richardson approached us as a partner, but really, he was after our patents. Beatrice sipped her scotch, letting the warm liquid calm her nerves. What happened? He planted evidence of financial irregularities, bribed officials to launch investigations. By the time we realized what was happening, our stock had plummeted. My father... Adjo's hands tightened around his glass. He had a heart attack during the hostile takeover. I was 19, studying at MIT. "I'm so sorry," Beatrice whispered, reaching across to touch his hand. The contact sent electricity through them both. "I spent the next decade rebuilding," Adjo continued, his fingers intertwining with hers, "created a new company, developed better technology, expanded across Africa and into Europe. But I never forgot what Richardson did." Beatrice stood, moving to the window. Her reflection overlapped with the city lights, making her appear ethereal. "And now he's trying the same thing with Silverstone Industries." "Yes, but this time it's different." Adjo moved to stand behind her, his presence both comforting and thrilling. "This time we can stop him." She turned to face him, their bodies close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him. "Why did you really help me escape? The truth." "Initially, because I needed access to evidence of Richardson's dealings with your company." His hand rose to cup her cheek, his touch sending shivers down her spine. "But the moment you kissed me, everything changed." Their eyes locked, the tension between them electric. Beatrice's heart raced as Adjo's other hand found her waist, pulling her closer. "We shouldn't," she whispered, even as her body betrayed her words by leaning into his touch. "It's too complicated." "Life is complicated," he murmured, his accent thickening with emotion. "But this..." His lips brushed against hers, soft and questioning. "This feels simple." The kiss deepened, passionate yet tender. All the fear, adrenaline, and attraction of the past 2 days crystallized into this moment. Beatrice's hands found their way to his chest, feeling his heart thundering beneath her palms. A distant noise broke them apart, the sound of a helicopter passing too close to the building. They both tensed, warrior instincts taking over. "Richardson's?" Beatrice asked, already moving away from the windows. Adjo checked his security feeds. "No, just a news chopper, but they're getting closer to finding us." He led her to his home office, a space dominated by multiple screens showing real-time data from around the world. Market tickers, news feeds, and security cameras created a digital command center. "Look at this," he said, pulling up financial records. "Richardson's been buying up small tech companies across Africa and Asia, companies with patents that could compete with both our businesses." Beatrice studied the data, her business acumen taking over. "These acquisition patterns, they're not just about market share. He's building something bigger." "A monopoly," Adjo confirmed. "Control over the next generation of financial technology. With Silverstone Industries' infrastructure and my company's innovation, he'd be unstoppable." Their shoulders touched as they pored over the evidence, the intimate moment from before simmering beneath their professional focus. Beatrice felt herself falling deeper, not just for the man, but for his brilliant mind and passionate drive for justice. "We need to move fast," she said, pulling up her own laptop. "The emergency board meeting is in 10 hours. If Richardson succeeds in forcing my father out..." "He won't," Adjo assured her, his hand finding the small of her back. "Because we have something he doesn't expect." "What's that?" His smile was both tender and fierce. "Us. Together." As if to prove his point, his security system chimed with an alert. One of his agents had discovered crucial information about Richardson's shell companies. They worked through the night, their shared mission bringing them closer with each passing hour. Occasionally their hands would brush or their eyes would meet, and the spark between them would flare hot enough to burn. Dawn found them surrounded by evidence of Richardson's crimes, their bodies tired but minds racing with possibilities. They had a plan, dangerous and bold, but possible. Beatrice watched the sunrise paint Adjo's strong profile in gold, and knew with sudden clarity that she was falling in love with him, not with the security guard she'd kissed to escape her wedding, or the billionaire CEO who'd hidden his identity, but with the complex, passionate man who was both and neither. The world outside was hunting them. Corporate empires were at stake, and danger lurked in every shadow. But here, in this moment, she felt more alive than ever before. Little did they know, forces were already in motion that would test not just their growing love, but everything they thought they knew about loyalty, betrayal, and the true nature of power. As the new day dawned, both Beatrice and Adjo understood one thing clearly. Their lives would never be the same again. Chapter 5. Shadows of the Past. The gold-tinged light of dawn was just beginning to streak across the penthouse windows when Beatrice discovered the photograph. She had been searching through Adjo's home office for more evidence against Richardson, her fingers trailing over leather-bound books and sophisticated technology, when she knocked over a small wooden box. It fell open, spilling its contents across the polished desk. Among the scattered papers was a weathered photograph that made her heart stop. The image showed two men standing proudly in front of a sleek office building, their arms around each other's shoulders, brilliant smiles on their faces. One was clearly a younger version of her father, James Silverstone. The other man, with Adjo's same commanding presence and warm eyes, must have been his father. "That was taken in Accra 20 years ago," Adjo's deep voice came from behind her. He moved into the office, his presence filling the space with an energy that made her skin tingle. He'd showered and changed into a perfectly tailored charcoal suit that transformed him from the security guard she'd first met into every inch, the powerful CEO he truly was. The day they signed their first partnership agreement. Beatrice traced the photograph with trembling fingers. "My father never told me about this." "No." Adjo moved closer, his cologne, an expensive blend of sandalwood and something uniquely him, enveloping her. "I imagine there's a lot he never told you about those days." He reached past her to pick up another photo that had fallen from the box. This one showed a teenage boy proudly holding a trophy, flanked by both men from the first photo. "This was my first robotics competition win. Your father was there. He and my father were more than business partners by then. They were true friends." Beatrice studied the image of young Adjo, seeing the same determination in his eyes that she recognized in the man beside her now. What happened? Why didn't they go through with the partnership? Adjo's jaw tightened, a muscle flickering beneath his skin. He moved to the wall of windows, staring out at the city coming alive below them. Maxwell Richardson happened. He turned back to her, his expression darkening with old pain. It was all arranged. Ambrose Technologies would provide the innovative payment systems, and Silverstone Industries would handle the infrastructure and American market penetration. Together, we would have revolutionized global financial technology. But 2 weeks before the final contracts were to be signed, Richardson made his move. Beatrice moved to stand beside him, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body, but not quite touching. What did he do? He leaked falsified documents to the financial press, suggesting that my father had been embezzling funds and bribing officials. The evidence was completely fabricated, but it was sophisticated enough to trigger multiple investigations. Our stock price plummeted. Potential investors pulled out, even your father. "He abandoned your family," Beatrice whispered, the realization hitting her like a physical blow. "He had no choice." Adjo's voice carried a complexity of emotions, understanding mixed with old betrayal. Richardson had threatened to destroy Silverstone Industries if your father stood by us. With a young daughter to think about, he made the only decision he could. Their eyes met in the reflection of the window, the rising sun painting them in shades of gold and shadow. "Me," Beatrice said softly. "He stepped away to protect me." "Yes." Adjo turned to face her fully. The stress of watching his life's work crumble, of losing his closest friend and business partner. It was too much for my father. The heart attack came 3 days after your father withdrew from the deal. Beatrice felt tears threatening. "I'm so sorry, Adjo." His hand rose to cup her cheek, thumb gently wiping away a tear that had escaped. "It was a long time ago. I was angry for years. At Richardson, at your father, at the whole system that allowed such manipulation. But that anger drove me to rebuild, to make Ambrose Technologies stronger than ever. And now Richardson's trying to do the same thing to my family's company," Beatrice said, unconsciously leaning into his touch. "Not trying. He's been orchestrating this for years." Adjo moved to his computer, pulling up a complex web of financial data. "Look at these patterns. The mysterious contract losses, the strategic acquisition of your company's shares through shell corporations, the sudden problems with your major projects. It's the exact same playbook he used against my father." Beatrice studied the screen, her business degree and years of boardroom experience allowing her to see the sinister elegance of Richardson's plan. The wedding was just his endgame, a way to legally seize control without anyone being able to challenge him. Exactly, but he didn't count on one thing. Adjo's voice softened as he looked at her. "What's that?" "You, your strength, your unwillingness to be sacrificed for corporate games." His hand found hers, their fingers intertwining naturally. "When you kissed me to escape that wedding, you didn't just save yourself, you gave us a chance to finally bring Richardson down." The electricity between them intensified. Beatrice was acutely aware of how close they were standing, of the way his presence seemed to fill all her senses. "And what about us?" she asked softly. "Is this just about revenge against Richardson?" Adjo pulled her closer, one hand sliding to the small of her back while the other cupped her face. "You know it's not," he murmured, his accent thickening with emotion. "What I feel for you, it's more than I ever expected to find in the middle of this corporate war." Their lips met in a kiss that started gentle, but quickly deepened with all the passion and tension that had been building between them. Beatrice's hands found their way to his chest, feeling his heart racing beneath the expensive fabric of his suit. Adjo kissed her like a man who had found something precious and unexpected, his touch both passionate and reverent. A sudden chime from his security system broke them apart. Adjo checked his phone, his expression turning serious. "Richardson's making his move. He's called an emergency shareholders meeting for this afternoon." "So soon?" Beatrice moved to look at the alert. "He must have found out I'm with you. He knows we're putting the pieces together." "Then we move up our timeline." Adjo pressed a button, and hidden panels in his office walls slid open to reveal sophisticated communications equipment. "I have people inside Richardson's organization gathering evidence. And I have something else. Something that could change everything." He opened a hidden safe behind an African mask, removing a small drive. "This contains proof of what really happened 20 years ago. Evidence that Richardson didn't just fabricate accusations against my father. He actively sabotaged both our companies to weaken them for his takeover attempts." "Why haven't you used it before?" "Because using it meant exposing your father's role in everything that happened. I didn't want to destroy Silverstone Industries along with Richardson." He met her eyes. But now, with you by my side, we might have a chance to save both our families' legacies. Beatrice took the drive, feeling the weight of 2 decades of history in her hands. What do we do first? First, we need to talk to your father. Adjo's expression was grave. But Richardson will be watching him closely. Getting to him won't be easy. Leave that to me, Beatrice said, a plan already forming in her mind. I know every secret entrance to the Silverstone building, and I know exactly when my father takes his morning coffee on the private rooftop garden. It's dangerous, Adjo warned, though his eyes showed admiration for her courage. Everything worth doing is dangerous, she countered, moving close to him again. Isn't that why you went undercover as a security guard instead of confronting Richardson directly? He smiled, pulling her back into his arms. You're remarkable, you know that? Brilliant, brave, beautiful. Their lips met again, this kiss carrying the weight of shared purpose and growing love. When they separated, both were slightly breathless. We should go, Beatrice said, though she made no move to leave his embrace. If we're going to save both our companies and stop Richardson, we need to move fast. One more thing, Adjo said softly. From his pocket, he removed a small velvet box. Inside was a stunning ring, not a diamond, but a perfect ruby surrounded by smaller emeralds. This was my mother's. I want you to wear it. Adjo. Beatrice breathed, understanding the significance. Not as an engagement ring, not yet, he clarified, but as a promise. No matter what happens with Richardson, with our companies, with any of it, what's growing between us is real. And when this is all over, if you'll have me, I want to do this right. With tears in her eyes, Beatrice held out her hand, letting him slip the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. When this is over, she promised, pulling him down for another kiss, we'll write our own story. No arranged marriages, no corporate games, just us. The sun had fully risen now, bathing them in the golden light of a new day. On Beatrice's finger, the ruby caught the light like a drop of fire, a symbol of the passion and purpose that burned between them. They had a ruthless corporate titan to defeat, 2 family legacies to save, and a love story to protect. But standing there in each other's arms, with the weight of the past finally in the open and the promise of the future on Beatrice's finger, they both knew that together they could face anything. The photograph that had started this revelation still lay on the desk. 2 friends, 2 visionaries, standing together before it all went wrong. Soon, their children would right those old wrongs, healing the wounds of the past while forging a new future. But first, they had a very dangerous meeting with James Silverstone to plan, and time was running out. Richardson's empire was about to discover that he had created his own worst enemies, a brilliant woman who refused to be a pawn in his games, and the man who had gone from security guard to soulmate in the space of a kiss. The corporate game was about to change forever, and love would prove to be the most powerful weapon of all. Chapter 6. The Kiss That Started a War. The pre-dawn air hung heavy with anticipation as Beatrice and Adjo surveilled the Silverstone Industries headquarters from their position in a neighboring building. The massive tower, a monument to her family's legacy, stretched into the dark sky like a modern fortress. In just 48 hours, their world had transformed completely. Corporate conspiracies, family secrets, and a love that grew stronger with each passing challenge. Beatrice checked her tactical gear for the 3rd time, each piece a far cry from the designer clothes she'd worn just days ago. The ruby ring on her finger caught the dim light as she adjusted her communications equipment. Next to her, Adjo moved with the fluid grace of a predator, his own gear emphasizing his powerful build. No trace remained of the humble security guard facade. This was the true Adjo Ambrose, CEO of a tech empire and trained warrior. Security patterns have changed, he noted, studying the building through advanced thermal imaging binoculars. His deep voice carried undertones of concern. Richardson's brought in serious muscle, ex-Delta Force, probably some Mossad veterans too. See how they move. That's not standard corporate security training. He passed her the binoculars, his hand lingering on hers for a moment. Through the thermal imaging, Beatrice could see dozens of red heat signatures moving through the building with military precision. But her attention focused on the rooftop garden, where a solitary figure appeared every morning at exactly 7:15. "Dad's morning ritual," she said softly. "He started it after Mom died, coffee in her garden, watching the sunrise. Said it helped him feel closer to her." Her voice caught slightly. "Even with everything that's happened, he hasn't missed a single day." Ajo touched her shoulder gently, electricity sparking between them, even in this tense moment. "Your father's a survivor, like you. That's why Richardson hasn't been able to break him, even after all these years." Beatrice turned to face him, taking in the features that had become so dear to her in such a short time. "When did you first suspect? About our parents' connection?" "There were hints," he admitted, his accent thickening slightly as it did when he spoke from the heart. "The way your father reacted when I infiltrated his security team. He seemed almost satisfied, like he'd been waiting for me. But I was so focused on gathering evidence against Richardson, I missed the bigger picture." His hand moved to cup her face, thumb brushing her cheek. "Until you kissed me. That moment, it changed everything. Suddenly the mission, the corporate war, none of it mattered as much as protecting you." Beatrice leaned into his touch, her heart racing despite the danger surrounding them. "Some CEO you are," she teased softly, "letting a kiss derail your carefully planned operation." His smile was both fierce and tender. "Best corporate takeover I've ever been involved in." The moment was interrupted by movement on their surveillance feeds. Richardson's men were changing shifts, creating a brief window in their coverage. It was time. They moved like shadows through the city's awakening streets, using service alleys and maintenance tunnels that Beatrice had mapped during her childhood explorations. Each was armed with both traditional weapons and cutting-edge tech from Ajo's company, sleek devices that could hack security systems or provide instant digital camouflage. The first real challenge came at the service entrance. Two of Richardson's elite guards stood, watch, their weapons concealed but visible to trained eyes. These weren't the usual rent-a-cops. Their posture and awareness screamed special forces training. "Remember the ventilation shaft," Beatrice whispered, leading Ajo to a hidden access panel behind a dumpster. Dad had it modified years ago when Mom was developing her hybrid roses. She needed precise temperature control, so they installed a separate system just for the garden. "Your mother," Ajo said as they navigated the narrow shaft, "she was more than just a brilliant botanist, wasn't she?" "She was a genius at everything she touched," Beatrice confirmed, pride mixing with old grief. The roses were her cover, a way to work on her real research without Richardson suspecting. Each new hybrid contained encrypted data in its genetic code. They emerged into the small irrigation control room adjacent to the rooftop garden. Through the glass doors, they could see Catherine Silverstone's legacy, a stunning rooftop oasis 90 stories above Manhattan. Black roses, her signature creation, bloomed among more traditional varieties, their unique petals containing secrets worth killing for. And there, right on schedule, was James Silverstone. He sat at his usual table, the city spread out before him like a glittering carpet. Steam rose from his coffee cup as he read the morning's financial reports. He looked older than Beatrice remembered, the weight of recent events evident in the new lines on his face. "Wait!" Ajo grabbed her arm as she moved to step out. His entire body had tensed, warrior instincts screaming warning. "Something's wrong." That's when they heard it, the distinctive sound of multiple safeties being clicked off. From behind planters and garden features, armed men emerged like deadly flowers blooming. And stepping out from behind a massive topiary, his silver hair gleaming in the morning sun, was Maxwell Richardson himself. "Right on time," Richardson's voice carried across the garden, smooth as aged whiskey and twice as toxic. "I must say, you two have led us on quite a chase. The runaway bride and the undercover CEO. It's almost Shakespearean." James hadn't moved, hadn't even looked up from his papers. The perfect picture of corporate indifference. "Daddy?" Beatrice's voice cracked with disbelief. Finally, James raised his head. His eyes met his daughter's through the glass, and in them she saw something that chilled her to the bone, resignation mixed with— was that a flicker of satisfaction? "I'm sorry, sweetheart," he said softly, "but some debts can never be repaid." Richardson's men moved with practiced efficiency to surround the irrigation room. Through the glass, Beatrice counted at least 15 operators, all armed with military-grade weapons. Her mind raced through possible escape routes, but each seemed more impossible than the last. Adjo pulled her close, his body shielding her instinctively. "Do you trust me?" he whispered, his lips barely moving. She looked up at him, this man who had gone from stranger to soulmate in the space of a stolen kiss. In his eyes, she saw not fear, but fierce determination and something deeper, love that had grown stronger with each shared danger. "With my life," she answered. His smile was predatory. "Then let's show them what happens when you corner two CEOs' kids who have everything to fight for." What happened next would be talked about in corporate circles for years to come. Adjo activated a device on his tactical belt, and suddenly the garden's entire irrigation system erupted, not with water, but with a dense, sophisticated smokescreen they'd prepared in advance. Simultaneously, all the electronic locks in the building engaged, trapping Richardson's men in their current positions. "Catherine's override codes still work," Beatrice said, with grim satisfaction, as her fingers flew over the irrigation control panel. "Mum always did think 3 steps ahead." Through the chaos, they could hear Richardson shouting orders, his perfect composure finally cracking. But it was James's voice that made them pause. "The final proof is in the black roses," he called out, his voice carrying clearly despite the chaos. "Everything you need. The formulas, the account numbers, the names of everyone involved. Your mother hid it all in their genetic sequence, right under Richardson's nose." "The roses," Beatrice breathed, understanding dawning. They weren't just her passion project. They were her insurance policy, Adjo finished, already moving to the nearest black rose plant with a specialized scanner. Each hybrid variety containing different pieces of evidence. Brilliant. Before Richardson's men could breach the sealed doors, Beatrice had already begun transmitting data from the garden's environmental monitoring system to Adjo's secure servers. Years of secret research and evidence hidden in plain sight among Catherine's beloved flowers. "Clever Catherine," Richardson snarled, realizing too late what was happening. Always one step ahead, even from the grave. But dead women tell no tales, do they, James? Just like dear Thomas Ambrose. His words were cut off by the distinctive sound of helicopter rotors. Through the smoke, multiple tactical teams rappelled onto the roof, Adjo's private security force arriving exactly on schedule. "You didn't think I'd come back to my own building without backup." Adjo's voice carried that quiet authority that had first drawn Beatrice to him. "I learned from my father's mistake, Richardson. Never face a snake without having cut off all its escape routes first." The fight that followed was swift and decisive. Richardson's men, though skilled, found themselves outmatched by Adjo's elite team. Years of planning, training, and preparation came to fruition in a symphony of precise, tactical maneuvers. As alarms blared throughout the building, Beatrice fought her way to her father. Her training with Adjo proved invaluable as she disabled 2 of Richardson's men using advanced martial arts techniques. "Dad?" Her voice carried years of questions. James stood slowly, his eyes filled with pride and regret. "I had to make him think he'd won," he explained, pulling her into a fierce hug. "Had to let him believe I'd betrayed you, so he'd bring his entire operation here, just like your mother would have done." The garden was a trap, Adjo realized, joining them after securing the perimeter. "You used yourself as bait to draw him out." "Just like Catherine would have done," James smiled sadly. "She and Thomas always said our children would be extraordinary. They'd be proud to see you 2 together fighting for justice." Suddenly, Richardson's voice cut through the chaos. He stood at the garden's edge, a small device clutched in his bleeding hand. "How touching, the family reunion we've all been waiting for." His finger hovered over a button. "Shame it has to end this way." "The bioweapon failsafe," James whispered in horror. "He's going to release it." But Beatrice was already moving. In one fluid motion, she grabbed a specialized knife from her tactical gear and threw it with deadly accuracy, a skill Adjo had insisted she master during their training. The blade struck Richardson's hand, sending the device flying over the edge. As Richardson roared in rage and pain, Adjo's team moved in to subdue him. The fallen titan of industry was reduced to a snarling, desperate man in handcuffs. Beatrice found herself trembling as the adrenaline wore off. Adjo pulled her into his arms, his heart beating as rapidly as hers. "I thought I'd lost you," he murmured against her hair. "When I saw him reach for that device." She looked up at him, love and triumph shining in her eyes. "Never. We're stronger together, remember? Just like our parents should have been." Their kiss was witnessed by the rising sun, the captured Richardson and James Silverstone, who smiled through tears as he watched love triumph over decades of corporate hatred. The kiss that had started this war had been born of desperation. This kiss, witnessed by friends, enemies, and family, was a declaration of victory, of love, and of a future brighter than either of them could have imagined. As sirens wailed below and the morning news helicopters circled overhead, capturing what would become legendary footage of Richardson's downfall, Beatrice and Adjo held each other in the garden her mother had built. The black roses bloomed around them, guardians of secrets now finally revealed. James approached them slowly, picking up one perfect black rose. "Your mother coded the cure into these," he said softly. "Not just evidence of Richardson's crimes, but the actual antidote to his bioweapons. She knew someday someone would need it. And now we can use it to help all those Richardson infected," Adjo said, his arm still around Beatrice. "Our companies working together the way they should have 20 years ago. But this time," Beatrice added, "the merger won't be forced by corporate games. It'll be sealed with love." The war wasn't over. There would be battles ahead in boardrooms and courtrooms. But together, they had struck the decisive blow. Love, they had proven, was the most powerful weapon in any corporate arsenal. And as the sun rose fully over Manhattan, painting the garden in shades of gold and promise, they knew that somewhere, Catherine and Thomas were smiling at the future their children had fought to create. A future built not on fear and control, but on the strongest foundation of all, love that had bloomed from a single, desperate kiss. Chapter 7. Truth and Consequences. The aftermath of the rooftop confrontation left no time for celebration. As dawn painted the city skyline in shades of gold and crimson, Beatrice and Adjo found themselves in his real command center, a sophisticated operations hub hidden beneath an abandoned warehouse in the industrial district. The walls were lined with advanced monitoring systems, each screen tracking different aspects of Richardson's crumbling empire. Beatrice stood before the main display, her fingers tracing the image of Angela Chen entering a private club 2 nights before her failed wedding. The timestamp showed 3 a.m., and the woman's expression was anything but friendly as she spoke with James Silverstone. "Watch," Adjo said softly, his hand resting on the small of Beatrice's back. The gesture was both protective and intimate, a reminder of how far they'd come from that first desperate kiss. The security footage showed an intense argument between James and Chen. Her father's normally composed demeanor was cracked, his gestures forceful and desperate. Chen, however, maintained an icy calm that sent chills down Beatrice's spine. "I don't understand," she said, studying Chen's face. "What does she have to do with any of this?" Adjo's jaw tightened as he pulled up more files on the screen. "Everything. She's been Richardson's silent partner from the beginning, but more than that." He hesitated, looking at Beatrice with concern. "She was there the day my father died." The revelation hit Beatrice like a physical blow. "The heart attack. It wasn't natural, was it?" "No." Adjo's voice was grim. "We discovered evidence of poisoning 6 months ago, a sophisticated compound that mimics natural cardiac arrest. That's when I started this operation." He pulled up another file, medical records for James Silverstone that made Beatrice gasp in horror. Terminal cancer, with months to live. "Your father isn't working with Richardson because he wants to," Adjo explained gently, pulling her close as she absorbed the shock. "He's being blackmailed. Chen's pharmaceutical division has developed a treatment that could extend his life, but they're using it as leverage." Tears filled Beatrice's eyes as understanding dawned. All this time, he was trying to protect me. The arranged marriage, the company takeover. He was playing for time. "Yes, but there's more." Adjo led her to a secure room where physical evidence was stored in reinforced cases. "He's been gathering evidence against Richardson and Chen for years. Every illegal deal, every corporate assassination disguised as an accident, every manipulated stock price, all of it documented." "Including what they did to your father," Beatrice whispered, pieces falling into place. "Exactly. Your father was my inside source all along, though he didn't know it was me behind the investigation. The betrayal on the roof was part of his cover." Beatrice sank into a chair, overwhelmed by the revelations. The ruby ring on her finger caught the light from the screens, reminding her of everything at stake. "Why didn't he tell me?" she asked softly. Adjo knelt before her, taking her hands in his. His touch sent electricity through her even now. "Because Richardson has eyes everywhere. Your genuine reaction to the betrayal had to be real, and—" A slight smile touched his lips. "He didn't count on us falling in love." Their eyes met, electricity crackling between them despite the gravity of the situation. "When did you know," she asked, "that this was more than just corporate intrigue?" "The moment you kissed me to escape that wedding," he admitted, reaching up to cup her cheek. "I'd spent months planning the perfect infiltration of Richardson's organization, and you destroyed all my careful plans with one kiss. And I didn't care because holding you felt more right than anything had in years." She leaned into his touch, drawing strength from his presence. "Where do we go from here? We have 24 hours before Richardson realizes your father is working against him." Adjo stood, helping her up. "In that time, we need to get the evidence to the SEC, Interpol, and the international press. Chen's pharmaceutical company has more than just your father's treatment. They're suppressing cures to maintain their profit margins. Once that gets out, their entire empire will collapse," Beatrice finished, her business mind already calculating the implications. "But Richardson will kill my father the moment he suspects. Not if we move first." Adjo pulled up a building schematic on the main screen. "Your father left a message for you, hidden in a place only you would know to look." Beatrice's eyes widened in recognition. Mum's roses. The rooftop garden was a diversion. The real evidence is hidden in your mother's private greenhouse at the estate. He cupped her face in his hands. But getting there won't be easy. Richardson's men will be watching. Then it's a good thing I have a former security guard to help me break in, she said with a slight smile. Adjo laughed softly, pulling her closer. I'm never going to live down that deception, am I? Never, she confirmed, rising on her toes to kiss him. The kiss deepened, carrying all their shared fears, hopes, and growing love. When they separated, both were slightly breathless. We should go, Beatrice said, though she made no move to leave his embrace. One more thing, Adjo said. From a secure safe in the wall, he removed a small box. Inside was a matching ruby ring to hers. If we're going to face Richardson and Chen together, I want them to know exactly who they're dealing with. No more hiding. Beatrice slipped the ring onto his finger, sealing it with a kiss. Together, she agreed. Their fingers intertwined, the matching rings glowing like embers in the dim light of the command center. On the screens around them, data streamed in from around the world, stock prices, security footage, encrypted messages. The pieces of a decades-long conspiracy were finally coming together. They had 24 hours to save her father, expose two of the world's most powerful corporate titans, and protect the love that had bloomed in the midst of chaos. But standing there in each other's arms, wearing matching rings that symbolized both love and war, they felt ready for anything. The real battle was about to begin, and this time they would fight it side by side. The billionaire CEO and the corporate heiress, bound by love, justice, and the desire to right the wrongs of the past. As they prepared their equipment for the mission ahead, Beatrice caught Adjo watching her with an intensity that made her heart race. "What?" she asked. "Just thinking about how one kiss changed everything," he said softly. "How sometimes the best corporate mergers aren't planned at all." She smiled, touching her ring. "And how sometimes the most powerful weapons in business aren't stocks or secrets, but love," he finished, pulling her close for another kiss. Outside, the sun climbed higher in the sky, marking the beginning of a day that would change the corporate world forever. But in that moment, held safe in each other's arms, Beatrice and Adjo knew they'd already won the most important victory of all. They'd found each other. Chapter 8. Family Ties. The Silverstone estate looked different in the gathering dusk, more fortress than home, its elegant architecture now seeming ominous under the darkening sky. Beatrice and Adjo observed from their position in the dense woods that bordered the property, both dressed in black tactical gear that melded with the shadows. "Security has changed," Adjo noted, scanning the grounds through high-tech binoculars. "They've added infrared sensors along the perimeter, motion detectors every 20 feet. His voice carried a note of professional admiration. "Richardson's not taking any chances." Beatrice studied the mansion she'd grown up in, her hand unconsciously finding the ruby ring on her finger. "The greenhouse is on the east side behind the rose gardens. Mom designed it herself. It's completely self-contained, with its own water and power systems." "And you're sure about the location of the evidence?" A bittersweet smile crossed her face. "The day before she died, Mum showed me a hidden compartment in the greenhouse. She said if anything ever happened to her or Dad, I should look there." Her voice caught slightly. "I never understood why, until now." Adjo lowered his binoculars, turning to look at her. Even in tactical gear, she was breathtaking. Strength and vulnerability perfectly balanced in her beautiful features. He reached out to cup her cheek, his thumb brushing away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. "Your mother was trying to protect you," he said softly, "just like your father is now." "I know." She leaned into his touch, drawing strength from his presence. "It's just all these years. I thought I knew my family's story. Now I'm learning it was all more complicated than I ever imagined. Life usually is. He smiled, the expression warming his normally serious features. I certainly never imagined that going undercover as a security guard would lead me to you. Their eyes met, electricity crackling between them despite the danger of their situation. Beatrice rose up on her toes, pressing a soft kiss to his lips. "For luck," she whispered. The moment was interrupted by a vibration from Adjo's secure phone. He checked it, his expression growing serious. "Chen's people are moving. She's called an emergency board meeting for her pharmaceutical company tomorrow morning. She's going to announce the cancer treatment," Beatrice realized. "Force my father's hand. Which means we have less time than we thought." Adjo quickly checked his equipment. "Richardson will make his move against Silverstone Industries as soon as Chen goes public. We need that evidence tonight." They moved through the woods like shadows, using the cover of darkness and Adjo's advanced tech to avoid the security patrols. Beatrice led them to a section of the wall partially hidden by thick ivy, a secret entrance she'd discovered as a child. "The ivy's fake," she explained, pulling aside the carefully crafted artificial plants to reveal a narrow door. Mom had it installed when she was redesigning the gardens, said every proper English manor should have a secret passage. Inside the grounds, they encountered their first real challenge. 2 of Richardson's men guarded the path to the greenhouse, their weapons visible under expensive suits. "These aren't regular security," Adjo whispered, studying their movements. "Private military contractors, probably ex-special forces." "There's another way," Beatrice said. "Through the koi pond." She led them to an ornamental pool where exotic fish swam lazily beneath floating water lilies. At the bottom, barely visible in the dim light, was a maintenance tunnel, part of the complex irrigation system that fed the greenhouse. They slipped into the cool water, using specialized breathing apparatus from Adjo's gear to swim through the underwater passage. Beatrice tried not to think about how much her current situation differed from just days ago, when her biggest concern had been which designer would make her wedding dress. The tunnel emerged inside the greenhouse's circulation system. They pulled themselves out of the water dripping from their tactical gear onto the concrete floor. "Your mother thought of everything," Adjo said admiringly as they moved through the greenhouse's lower level. "She was brilliant," Beatrice agreed. "Everyone saw the socialite who threw amazing parties, but she was the real business genius behind Silverstone Industries' early success." They climbed to the main level of the greenhouse, where rare plants from around the world thrived in the carefully maintained environment. At the center was Catherine Silverstone's pride and joy, a collection of black roses she'd spent years developing. "The compartment is under here," Beatrice said, moving to a particular planter. Her fingers found a hidden catch, and a panel slid open with a soft click. Inside was a weathered leather briefcase, its surface etched with her mother's initials, CS. "It was never about the companies, was it?" Beatrice said softly, running her fingers over the initials. "Mom was investigating Chen and Richardson even back then." "Your mother suspected what they were really doing with the pharmaceutical division," Adjo confirmed. "That's why they arranged her accident." The words hung heavy in the humid air of the greenhouse. Beatrice's hands trembled slightly as she opened the briefcase, revealing stacks of documents, hard drives, and a handwritten letter addressed to her. Before she could read it, Adjo's head snapped up. "We've got company." Voices approached from outside, multiple sets of footsteps moving with professional precision. The door to the greenhouse opened, and light flooded in. Well, Angela Chen's cold voice cut through the humid air. "I must say, you've both exceeded expectations." She stepped into the greenhouse, elegant even at this late hour, in a perfectly tailored suit. Behind her, armed men moved to surround them. "I told Maxwell this elaborate game wasn't necessary," she continued, moving closer, "that we should have simply eliminated you both like we did your parents," her eyes fixed on the briefcase in Beatrice's hands. "Catherine was so close to exposing us. Now her daughter will join her." "You really love to monologue, don't you?" Beatrice's voice was steady despite her racing heart. "Mom always said that was your weakness. You need everyone to know how clever you are." Chen's perfectly composed expression flickered with anger. "Amusing. But I'm not the one surrounded and outgunned." "Are you sure about that?" Adjo's deep voice carried a note of satisfaction. Above them, the greenhouse's environmental systems suddenly activated. The sprinklers came on full force, but instead of water, thick smoke poured out, filling the space with impenetrable fog. In the chaos that followed, several things happened at once. The armed men opened fire, their bullets shattering glass and destroying priceless plants. Adjo moved with lethal efficiency, his special forces training evident as he engaged the nearest threats. And Beatrice, her mother's briefcase clutched tight, threw herself behind a planter as she activated the emergency protocols her mother had built into the greenhouse's systems. The lights went out, plunging everything into darkness except for the eerie glow of emergency strips along the floor. "You can't escape," Chen's voice carried over the chaos. "Even if you get out of here, Richardson has your father. It's over." "No," Beatrice said softly, reaching for Adjo's hand in the darkness. "It's just beginning." Their fingers intertwined, the matching ruby rings catching the faint light like drops of blood. Together they moved through the smoke and shadows, their steps sure despite the madness around them. Above them, the glass ceiling of the greenhouse shattered as Adjo's backup team repelled in. The tide of battle turned swiftly, Chen's men finding themselves outmaneuvered and surrounded. But Chen herself had vanished in the chaos, leaving behind only her mocking laughter and a much more immediate threat, the sound of helicopters approaching, carrying Richardson's private army. "Time to go," Adjo said, pulling Beatrice toward a hidden exit. "My team will handle them." "Wait." Beatrice stopped, turning back to her mother's beloved roses. From among the black blooms, she plucked a single perfect flower. Something to remember her by. They escaped into the night just as Richardson's helicopters appeared over the estate, their searchlights cutting through the darkness like angry eyes. Behind them, the greenhouse erupted in gunfire and explosions, Catherine Silverstone's botanical sanctuary becoming a battlefield. But they had what they came for, the briefcase full of evidence and, more importantly, each other. As they raced through the darkness toward their escape vehicle, Beatrice clutched both the briefcase and the black rose, symbols of her parents' legacy and her own destiny. The war was far from over. Richardson still held her father. Chen was still free to continue her deadly pharmaceutical games, but for the first time, Beatrice felt truly ready to fight back, because now she knew the truth about her mother's death. Now she had proof of Chen and Richardson's crimes, and most importantly, she had Adjo beside her, the man who had gone from stranger to soulmate in the space of a stolen kiss. As they sped away from the estate, Beatrice finally opened her mother's letter, its pages illuminated by the dawn breaking on the horizon. What she read would change everything, not just for her and Adjo, but for the entire corporate world. The game was about to change, and love would prove to be the most powerful weapon of all. Chapter 9. The Storm Breaks Dawn was breaking over the city as Beatrice and Adjo arrived at their new safe house, a luxurious penthouse in an unmarked building owned by one of his shell corporations. Still damp from their escape through the greenhouse, still running on adrenaline, they secured the perimeter before finally allowing themselves to breathe. Beatrice sat at a sleek glass desk, her mother's black rose placed carefully in a crystal vase beside her. The briefcase lay open before her, Catherine Silverstone's letter trembling slightly in her hands as she began to read aloud. My dearest Beatrice, if you're reading this, then everything I feared has come to pass. Chen and Richardson have made their move, and your father has been forced to play their game. But there's something they don't know, something I discovered just before my accident. Chen's pharmaceutical division isn't just suppressing cures, they're creating diseases. The cancer your father is fighting? It's not natural. They infected him during a board meeting in Singapore 3 years ago, right after I threatened to expose their operation. But I was ready for them. The evidence in this briefcase isn't just about corporate crimes. It's about biological warfare disguised as medical research, and there's more. The black roses you're protecting. Their genetic sequence contains the key to undoing everything Chen has created. That's why I spent years developing them. They're not just flowers, they're the cure. Beatrice's voice broke as she looked at the perfect black bloom beside her. Adjo moved behind her, his hands gently massaging her shoulders as she continued reading. There's one more thing you need to know. By now, you've probably met Thomas Ambrose's son. Your father and I always hoped you two would find each other naturally, not through some corporate arrangement. The love Thomas and I shared was more than just a business partnership, and it got us both killed. But if you're reading this with Adjo by your side, then maybe our dream of uniting our families through love rather than business will come true after all. The letter fell from Beatrice's trembling fingers. She turned to look up at Adjo, seeing the same shock in his eyes. You knew? She whispered. He shook his head, pulling her up into his arms. I knew our parents were close, but this changes everything. They were in love, Beatrice said softly, understanding dawning. Your father and my mother. That's why Richardson targeted them first. Their love made them too powerful, too likely to expose the truth. And now history is repeating itself, Adjo murmured, his thumb brushing over the ruby ring on her finger. But this time, we're ready for them. Before they could discuss further, Adjo's secure phone buzzed with an urgent alert. Chen had made her move, a worldwide press release announcing a breakthrough cancer treatment, with James Silverstone scheduled to be the first recipient. It's a trap, Beatrice said, studying the announcement. They're going to use the public announcement to force Dad to sign over his shares, once they have control of both companies. They can bury the evidence of their bioweapon program forever, Adjo finished. His jaw tightened as another alert came through. Richardson's called an emergency board meeting for Silverstone Industries. It's happening in 3 hours. Beatrice's mind raced with possibilities. The black rose, if it really contains the cure. My labs can analyze it, Adjo said, but we need time. Then we'll have to create some. Beatrice stood, determination replacing shock. Chen wants to play games with the media. Let's give them a real story. She outlined her plan, audacious, dangerous, and just crazy enough to work. Adjo listened, his admiration growing with each detail. It's risky, he said when she finished. If we're wrong about any of this, then we'll face it together. She stepped closer, her hand sliding up his chest. That's what our parents couldn't do. They tried to fight separately, to protect each other, but we're stronger together. Adjo pulled her closer, one hand tangling in her hair as he brought his lips to hers. The kiss was fierce, passionate, carrying all the weight of their shared destiny and growing love. When they separated, both slightly breathless, Adjo pressed his forehead to hers. Together, he agreed. They had 3 hours to save her father, expose a global conspiracy, and prevent Chen's bioweapons from being unleashed on the world. But first, they had a press conference to crash. The storm was about to break, and at its center stood two people bound by love, destiny, and a determination to right the wrongs of the past. Richardson and Chen had no idea what was coming, because this time love wouldn't be their victim's weakness. This time, it would be their downfall. Chapter 10. Power Moves. The grand ballroom of the Richardson Global Tower buzzed with anticipation as journalists and corporate elite gathered for what had been billed as a revolutionary announcement in cancer treatment. Security was tight, with Richardson's private military contractors positioned at every entrance, their weapons concealed but present. On the massive screens around the room, a countdown timer ticked away the minutes until Angela Chen's presentation. In exactly 47 minutes, she would announce her miracle cure, with James Silverstone as her star patient. Simultaneously, across town, Richardson would use the distraction to force through his takeover of Silverstone Industries. What neither of them knew was that 3 floors below, in the building's sophisticated security center, 2 of the guards were not what they seemed. "Systems accessed," Beatrice whispered, her fingers flying over the keyboard. She'd traded her tactical gear for a security uniform, her hair tucked beneath a cap, but the ruby ring still gleamed on her finger. "Uploading Mum's files now." Beside her, similarly disguised, Adjo monitored the building's security feeds. Chen's arrived, 7th floor private suite. Richardson's men are with her. His deep voice carried a note of tension. "Your father?" Still in medical containment on the 3rd floor. Beatrice's throat tightened as she watched her father on the security feed. He looked pale, tired, but there was something in his eyes, a glimmer of the strength she remembered from her childhood. "He knows we're coming." Their plan was audacious in its complexity. While Chen prepared for her triumphant announcement, Beatrice had accessed the building's mainframe, using skills learned at her mother's knee to plant Catherine's evidence throughout the corporate servers. Every screen in the building, every journalist's laptop, every television feed would simultaneously receive proof of Chen's bioweapons program when the time came. But first, they had to get to James. "Security team approaching," Adjo warned. "East corridor." They smoothly transitioned into their covers, pretending to monitor routine security feeds as the team passed. Beatrice held her breath, but their disguises held. As soon as the team was gone, they moved into action. "Mum's files are in place," Beatrice confirmed. "Ready for remote activation. Did your team get the Black Rose to your labs?" "Analysis is already underway." Adjo checked his secure phone. "Initial results confirm your mother's research. The Rose's genetic sequence contains a counter-agent to Chen's bioweapons." A shadow of grief passed over Beatrice's face. All those years spent developing those roses, she knew she was racing against time. Adjo's hand found hers, squeezing gently. "She'd be proud of you. Both our parents would." The moment was interrupted by movement on the security feeds. Chen had left her suite, heading toward the ballroom. It was time. They moved through the building like shadows, their security uniforms providing perfect cover. Years of corporate espionage had taught them both how to blend in, to become invisible in plain sight. But this time, they weren't working against each other. They were partners in every sense. The medical containment area was heavily guarded, but they had planned for this. At precisely 2:47 p.m., the building's fire suppression system activated on 3 floors, drawing away half the security team. Simultaneously, Adjo's people outside caused a minor vehicle incident, pulling away more guards. Their window was tiny, less than 2 minutes to reach James Silverstone. They found him already dressed and waiting, as if he'd known exactly when they would arrive. The moment he saw Beatrice, emotion cracked his composed facade. "My brilliant girl," he whispered, pulling her into a fierce hug. "I'm so sorry for everything." Later, Dad, Beatrice said, though she held him tight for a moment. Right now, we need to get you to the ballroom. James straightened, determination replacing fatigue in his bearing. Chen's announcement is about to backfire spectacularly, Adjo confirmed, checking the corridor, but we need you on that stage when it happens. They moved quickly but carefully through the building's service corridors, James keeping pace despite his illness. As they walked, Beatrice finally asked the question that had been burning in her mind. Did you know about Mom and Thomas? James's steps faltered slightly. I suspected. Catherine and Thomas, they had a connection that went beyond business, but they never acted on it. They were both too honorable. His eyes met Adjo's. They would have been happy to see you two together. Before they could discuss further, they reached the ballroom's backstage area. Through the curtains, they could hear Chen beginning her presentation, her voice smooth and confident as she outlined her company's breakthrough research. Ready? Adjo asked both of them, his hand finding Beatrice's. She squeezed his fingers, feeling the matching ruby rings pressed together. Born ready. What happened next would be talked about in corporate circles for decades to come. As Chen reached the climax of her presentation, preparing to bring out James Silverstone as her miraculous success story, every screen in the building suddenly changed. Catherine Silverstone's face appeared, a video recorded just days before her death. Her voice, strong and clear, laid out the truth about Chen's bioweapons program. Documents, test results, and damning evidence streamed across every available display. The audience erupted in chaos. Journalists' phones and laptops pinged with downloads of supporting evidence. Chen's perfect composure cracked as she realized what was happening. That's when James Silverstone walked onto the stage, but not as Chen's pet patient. He strode out like the corporate titan he was, his daughter and Adjo flanking him. Ladies and gentlemen, his voice boomed through the speakers, I believe we need to discuss the real breakthrough today, the cure for the diseases that Chen's company has been deliberately spreading. Security teams moved to intervene, but Adjo's people had already replaced key personnel. Chen found herself trapped on her own stage as years of carefully hidden crimes were exposed to the world. It's over, Angela, Beatrice said, stepping forward. In her hand was a single black rose. Mom left us everything we needed to bring you down. The cure, the evidence, all of it. Chen's mask finally cracked completely. You have no idea what you're doing, she snarled. Richardson has problems of his own. Adjo cut in smoothly, holding up his phone. On it was a live feed of Richardson being led out of Silverstone Industries in handcuffs. It seems the SEC is very interested in some offshore accounts we uncovered. The ballroom had become a media circus, cameras flashing as security led Chen away. Her perfect plan, years in the making, had crumbled in minutes. But there was one more surprise, waiting. As medical teams rushed to examine James, preliminary tests revealed something shocking. His cancer was already beginning to respond to treatment. The Black Rose's genetic sequence, combined with cutting-edge medical technology, was working. In the chaos that followed, Beatrice found herself in Adjo's arms, their foreheads pressed together as the world exploded around them. I love you, she whispered, saying the words for the first time. Not because our parents wished it, or because of any corporate alliance, just because you're you. His kiss was answer enough, passionate and tender all at once. When they separated, both slightly breathless, he smiled. I love you too. Now, shall we finish saving our companies? Beatrice looked around the ballroom, at her father, already looking stronger as proper treatment began, at Chen being led away, in handcuffs, at the media capturing every moment of corporate history being made. Together, she agreed, the ruby ring glowing like fire on her finger. The storm had broken, and in its wake, a new era of corporate leadership was dawning. But more importantly, a love story that had begun with a desperate kiss was blossoming into something powerful enough to change the world. The next few hours would be crucial, consolidating their victory, protecting their evidence, ensuring Chen and Richardson faced justice. But for now, they stood together, stronger for all they'd overcome, ready to write the next chapter of their story. Above them, on the massive screens, Catherine Silverstone's final message played out, her voice a benediction over the chaos. Love, my darling daughter, is the most powerful force in any boardroom. Never forget that. And Beatrice, safe in Adjo's arms with her father smiling proudly nearby, knew that she never would. Chapter 11. Love and War. The aftermath of Chen's arrest should have been their moment of triumph. Instead, 24 hours after their dramatic confrontation in the Richardson Global Tower, Beatrice found herself racing through the rain-slicked streets of the financial district, her heart pounding with fear. "He's gone dark," Adjo's voice crackled through her earpiece. "All surveillance lost. Last known location was the old Silverstone warehouse by the river. Her father had vanished just hours after receiving the enhanced treatment derived from Catherine's black roses. The cancer was in retreat, his strength returning, but with it came a revelation that had shaken them all. There was one more layer to the conspiracy, one that even Catherine hadn't uncovered. "Talk to me," Beatrice said, as she navigated through traffic. "What did the final decrypt from Mum's files show?" "Chen wasn't the mastermind," Adjo replied grimly. "She was working for someone else, someone who's been pulling strings in global finance for decades. Your father recognized the signature protocol in the bioweapons coding. It matched projects he worked on 30 years ago at a classified research facility." "Project Nightshade," Beatrice whispered, remembering the files they'd discovered hidden deep in her mother's evidence. "But that would mean—" "Yes." Adjo's voice was heavy. "The person behind everything, the one who ordered both our parents' deaths, who engineered this entire corporate war, is your father's old mentor, Robert Sterling." The name hit Beatrice like a physical blow. Sterling had been like a grandfather to her, the distinguished gentleman who'd given her her first stock portfolio on her 10th birthday. He'd been at every major family event, had helped guide Silverstone Industries through its early days. "He's been watching us this whole time," she realized, her mind racing. Chen, Richardson, they were just his puppets. Exactly. And now that they've failed him. The sound of rapid typing came through her earpiece as Adjo coordinated his security teams. "Sterling's going to try to finish what he started. Your father must have gone to confront him." Lightning split the sky as Beatrice pulled up to the abandoned warehouse complex. The old Silverstone Industries research facility had been officially closed for years, but she could see lights moving inside the main building. "I'm here," she said, checking her phone where the tracking app showed Adjo's position. "How far out are you?" 10 minutes. "Beatrice, wait for me. Sterling is dangerous. He's not just a corporate raider. The bioweapons program was just the tip of his operations. Dad doesn't have 10 minutes. She stepped out into the rain, her boots splashing in puddles that reflected the storm-torn sky. "I'm going in." The warehouse was a maze of old research labs and abandoned equipment. Beatrice moved carefully through the shadows, grateful for the tactical training Adjo had insisted on during their days in hiding. The ruby ring on her finger caught occasional glints of lightning through broken windows, reminding her of everything at stake. Voices echoed from the main research floor, her father's and another older voice that made her blood run cold. "You should have stayed retired, James," Sterling was saying, his cultured tones carrying clearly. "Enjoyed your remaining time with that miracle cure your wife left behind. Instead, you had to keep digging." "It was you." James's voice was heavy with betrayal. "All those years, watching my family, pretending to be our mentor, our friend, while you plotted to steal everything we built." "Built?" Sterling laughed. I gave you the foundation for everything you have. Your early patents, your key contracts, all came through my connections. And then you and Catherine had to develop a conscience, started asking questions about where the technology really came from, who was really funding the research. Beatrice crept closer. Using old equipment as cover, she could see them now. Her father standing straight and proud, despite his recent illness, facing the elegant figure of Robert Sterling. But Sterling wasn't alone. Armed men in tactical gear surrounded him, weapons trained on James. Catherine discovered what you really were, James said. That's why you had her killed. My dear boy, I gave Catherine every chance to look the other way, just as I gave Thomas Ambrose the same choice. The bioweapons program was too valuable to risk exposure. The pharmaceutical patents alone are worth billions. And the people you've infected, the lives you've destroyed testing your weapons. Sterling spread his hands in a gesture of false regret. Acceptable losses in the pursuit of progress. Just as your death will be written off as a tragic relapse. He nodded to his men, who raised their weapons. But before they could fire, Beatrice stepped out of the shadows. Chapter 12. Empire of Love. 1 year later. The Silverstone estate gardens had never looked more beautiful. Thousands of twinkling lights transformed the grounds into a fairy tale setting, with Catherine's black roses woven through elegant archways. The same place where Beatrice had fled her arranged marriage now hosted a very different celebration, a wedding born of love, not corporate obligation. Beatrice stood before her mother's favorite mirror, this time wearing a gown of her own choosing. The ivory silk seemed to float around her, accented with delicate black rose petals that matched the flowers in her bouquet. The ruby ring on her finger, now accompanied by a stunning engagement ring, glowed like an ember in the soft light. Mom would have loved this, James said from the doorway. His cancer was in full remission thanks to Catherine's cure, which had now helped thousands of others affected by Sterling's bioweapons. He looked strong and happy, more like the father she remembered from her childhood. She's here, Beatrice smiled, touching the locket around her neck that contained a pressed black rose petal. So is Thomas. The past year had transformed both families' empires. After Sterling's arrest, Beatrice and Adjo had merged Silverstone Industries and Ambrose Technologies through a genuine partnership, not a forced takeover. Their combined company now led the world in medical research and technological innovation, with Catherine's cures freely available to all who needed them. A soft knock at the door revealed Julia, Beatrice's aunt, dabbing at her eyes. "It's time, darling. And wait until you see what your groom has done with the garden." Beatrice's heart fluttered as she took her father's arm. The walk through the mansion was different this time. No fear, no desperation, just pure joy and anticipation. As the doors to the garden opened, she gasped. Adjo had transformed the space into a magical blend of African and Western traditions. Hundreds of guests stood as the music began, a beautiful fusion of classical orchestra and traditional African drums. But Beatrice hardly noticed them. Her eyes were fixed on Adjo, standing beneath an arch of black roses. He wore a perfectly tailored tuxedo, accented with traditional Ghanaian kente cloth, looking every inch the powerful CEO who had stolen her heart with a kiss. Their eyes met, and the world seemed to stop. In his gaze was everything: love, pride, partnership, and a future brighter than either could have imagined. James kissed her cheek as they reached the altar. "Your mother once told me that true love was the most powerful force in any boardroom," he whispered. She was right. The ceremony blended their cultures and families beautifully. When they exchanged rings, the ruby rings now joined by wedding bands, their hands were steady, but their eyes were bright with tears of joy. "1 year ago," Adjo said in his vows, his deep voice carrying across the hushed garden, A desperate bride kissed a security guard to escape an arranged marriage. Little did she know that guard was just as trapped in corporate games as she was. But that kiss... He smiled, squeezing her hands. That kiss changed everything. It gave us both the courage to fight for something real. Beatrice's voice shook slightly as she responded. I thought I was kissing a stranger that day, but my heart knew better. It knew I was kissing my future, my partner, my soulmate. Together, we've faced corporate wars, family secrets, and near-death experiences. But more importantly, together, we've built something beautiful, a love story that would make our parents proud. The reception was a joyous celebration that lasted well into the night. The global business elite mingled with Adjo's family from Ghana, while journalists discreetly covered what they were calling the merger of the century. But the real story wasn't about business at all. Under the stars, Adjo led Beatrice in their first dance, their movements perfectly synchronized after months of practice. Happy, he murmured against her ear. Beyond happy, she replied, tilting her face up for a kiss. Though I do miss that security guard uniform sometimes. He laughed, spinning her under the twinkling lights. I'll wear it for our anniversary. Later, they snuck away to Catherine's greenhouse, now restored to its former glory. The black roses bloomed year-round, their unique genetics continuing to provide healing to those in need. Look, Beatrice pointed to two new plants growing together, their stems intertwined. One bore Catherine's signature black blooms, the other produced flowers in a deep, rich gold, a new variety Adjo's labs had developed in honor of his father. Just like us, Adjo said softly, pulling her close. Two different flowers, growing stronger together. The greenhouse's glass walls reflected the celebration continuing in the garden, but here in this peaceful space, surrounded by their parents' legacy, they shared a moment of quiet joy. Ready to change the world? Beatrice asked, looking up at her husband. With you by my side, Adjo smiled, leaning down to kiss her. I'm ready for anything. The kiss was sweet and passionate, carrying echoes of that first desperate kiss that had started their journey, but now filled with the confidence of true love and shared purpose. Their story would be told for generations. The security guard who was really a CEO, the runaway bride who became a corporate warrior, and the love that transformed two business empires into a force for good in the world. But more importantly, it was their story. One that began with a stolen kiss and ended with a love powerful enough to heal the wounds of the past and build a better future. As they rejoined their celebration, the black and gold roses continued to bloom in the greenhouse, a living testament to the truth they had discovered, that in business, as in life, love truly was the greatest power of all. Subscribe if you enjoyed.